Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 7th, 2023. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. It's me and Frankie today introducing you to the show. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let us know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming live on Facebook, so you can ask questions and leave comments there as well, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by rehashing last week's weekly tittle, except we're not quite, because it sounds as if no one tackled this one, or maybe we'll hear about people who've tackled this one in the Zoom chat. Last week's tittle was called "Shift a Habit to Rise to your new challenge." That's a mouthful. I don't know who came up with that crazy title. The assignment was to examine elements of your routine that have been derailed by recent big changes in your life. We'd love to hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook. Did anyone tackle the tittle this week? Please let us know in the comments. Since it seems as if our audience found the tittle challenging, I'm going to share a comment from the previous week that we never got around to. 2 weeks ago, one of the options for the tittle assignment was to try to boost your morning routine. Leela, who is with us live in Zoom today, shared a story about where her morning routine went wrong one day recently. Leela wrote, "I can definitely tell you what the sticking point was for my routine this morning. It was when one of my kittens jumped into the toilet before I could lower the lid. So I spent 25 extra minutes bathing the cat, scrubbing half the bathroom, including the walls, and starting a load of laundry for the clothes and towels that got soaked during the event. My plan for the future is to be more aware of where the cats are when I'm using the restroom, so we can skip this entire process. LOL. Thought that might entertain you. Thanks for all you guys do."
It totally made me laugh out loud. I've read it before, and hearing it again just makes me laugh harder. I can totally picture the kitten jumping into the bowl and finding himself in soiled water, and the immediate spasmodic freak out that took place next. I feel for you in that scenario. There's just not a fast way to recover from that. I'm sure it blew up the start of your day completely. And it underscores the need to give yourself extra time in the morning, just in case something goes awry and blows up your routines. No one can really plan for the kitten chaos factor. And if Leela had 20 minutes of cushion built into her morning routine, then she can either get out of the house earlier or use that time to deal with the kitten-generated disruption. So funny, Leila. Thank you for sharing. I just have this mental picture of the cat going into the bowl, and then every cat that jumps in and finds himself suddenly in water by mistake, the freak out that happens afterwards is disastrous and hilarious at the same time. And I'm sure it was very entertaining as you were getting completely doused with water all over the bathroom. Maybe in the moment you couldn't laugh about it, but you can certainly laugh about it afterwards. Oh my God. Thank you for sharing that story. That was really hilarious for me. Thanks.
Lisa Beth reports, "We got a new puppy. Things needed to be modified to allow for his needs."
Yes, absolutely. Because they chew on everything and they pee on everything, and they require training, and they knock everything over. And so yes, that definitely requires some shifting to help your house survive the growth period from puppy to, adult dog. Good luck with that.
Well, she went on to say, "My morning resets and night routine include his care."
Right? Just to keep on top of it.
Yeah, I my own morning rituals include getting dressed for the walk, taking Hardy on the walk, microwaving his artisanal dog breakfast. That's the homemade part of his food. Mixing it up with the dry stuff, serving it to His Majesty, and then washing
Right?
his face afterwards, because
After he makes a mess,
we have a very shaggy dog with a lot of beard, and
and
rather
he
than
makes a big old food mess.
have him groomed, we've let him go au naturel, and it means he needs a face wash after the wet food. So
Oh, how many of us have our mornings completely built around dealing with the pets? 100%. That's definitely part of the deal.
M says, well, in response to the actual tittle for this week, M says, my bad habit is dumping everything on the couch. This has little to do with not having anyone around the house to share the couch with. Anyway, I realized that the habit is part of a log jam. I need to make it easier to put things away and to make a better place for hanging up my coat and bag.
And taking the extra, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to take those things to their final destination, their new parking space, instead of, it takes 30 seconds to dump it all on the couch, but then you have to live with it there. But if you take the extra few minutes to go and put them in where they're going to live instead, then you don't have a mess on the couch and your stuff is where you need it when you need it. It does take a little bit of extra time when you come in. And, those of us that come in and immediately have to go to the bathroom sometimes have to pause the parking of the things until the bathroom trip is over. But then you should be able to come back out and pick everything back up and go and put things where it needs to go. It's, you can't carry that much. There's not that much to put away. So give yourself the time to do it.
Paula said, no, no tittle here, but I did deposit the loose change I rolled up last week. Also took foreign money and miscellaneous silver to a coin shop and got a nice amount of money.
Excellent. Good for you. You ran 2 errands and got all that stuff out of the house. Good for you. And you got paid out of it. That's awesome. You got paid on both of those errands. That's excellent.
Em also shared, my mother used a clothespin to hold her Cocker Spaniel's ears out of the dog's food.
I wonder what the dog thought about that. Like, is that incentive to eat faster so the clothespin can come down? Oh.
Well, generally when a dog is eating, they don't notice anything else going on. The house could be burning down, but while they're tucking into that bowl of food, they don't really care that much.
Care at all. Got it. Okay.
Okay, we should get on with our main topic.
Okay.
Has a flurry of holiday cooking and entertaining, an influx of new toys and treats, and daily duty as one of the busiest parts of your home left your kitchen in desperate need of attention? Today, we're going to explore the sources of kitchen clutter and offer strategies to optimize your kitchen to fit your food habits, tastes, and lifestyle.
So the kitchen is an active place in most homes because everybody's got to eat sometime, right? But if you're an indifferent cook like me, or you have an older house with small storage areas, a lot of gadget variety or Costco sized packages of food supplies are really hard to put away, and it doesn't really make much sense. Someone is going into that kitchen a few times a day, at least, to find food, prep food, eat food. So you know that there's going to be a constant churn in there. And it's always going to be an area that is in motion and things that are being added to all the time. So what does your kitchen clutter look like? According to the survey results, it mostly looks like a collection of paper on the counters, too many appliances out on the surfaces, and lots of unwashed dishes in the sink. The unwashed dishes in the sink was a very common complaint. These are the most often given responses. But a lot of people were like, yeah, there's all these dirty dishes sitting around in the kitchen, in the sink, on the counter. A lot of you are suffering from that particular one. Many of you are using the counters or the kitchen islands as a large paper sorting table instead of as a work surface. So I guess it's just seen as broad, clear space. And so that it becomes a place that paper gets laid down and sorted on it. If you're a good cook, then your friends are giving you kitchen gifts as presents. and it gives them an excuse to buy a whole bunch of, silly appliances, whatever's out this season that is the latest and greatest gadget. So you likely have a lot of gadgets out on the counter or in the drawers, in the cabinets that are taking up a bunch of space and crowding your space and making it much more cluttered. Cookbooks are a staple in all of the kitchens that I've ever been in. And anybody that likes to cook has a lot of cookbooks, but the kitchen isn't really a library, and storing a big collection of cookbooks in the kitchen really creates clutter in the kitchen, and it uses up valuable storage or work surface space. A lot of times I see cookbooks on the lowest cabinet that's sort of in the big middle of the kitchen. Like, they give away some of the kitchen storage space to parking a bunch of cookbooks that then no one ever actually gets into, or they get in and out of their favorite 10 books, and the other 45 books that they've collected are just taking up valuable space. And so it's one of the ways that it's one of the things that adds clutter to the kitchen, is storing the whole cookbook collection there. Lots of cooks, Ed included, like to try exotic ingredients. So it's part of the fun of exploring cooking, but it doesn't all get used, and then it chokes up the pantry or the fridge. So if you're somebody that buys, oh, look at this cool spice, or look at this cool noodle or whatever, I'm going to try to make Chinese food or Thai food. You're going to try something that you don't normally do. And then you end up with a bunch of ingredients that are not used up, taking up space, don't get circled back to again. And that creates clutter, particularly in the pantry and the fridge. We all buy lots of canned goods, and because they're cheap staples, and it's the, how you stock the kitchen against emergencies, you have a bunch of canned goods, but I'm not sure that we use them as quickly as we buy them. And often we go to the store, we see the green bean can, and we buy more green beans, except that we haven't used the last 18 cans that we bought, and we just buy them without thinking, instead of asking ourselves where we are in that volume. Have we really run low on green beans yet? And so they're cheap and easy to buy. They don't bust the bank. And so we tend to buy them much, much faster than we actually use them up. And so that makes the pantry be clogged with things that are slowly going out of date, and that never end up in a recipe. And we keep adding more cans, but we don't go through the process of actually going back in and taking old ones out, or trying to cook with old ones at the same rate that we're adding in. And so it means that the pantry gets overstuffed, and then you can't find anything in there.
Pat shared a story of soup. I used to organize my cans of soup by type, then by expiration date. But as I bought more cans, they quickly became out of order. I recently reorganized them just by expiration date. Now I know which cans I need to use first, and it's working a lot better. I need to stop buying soup until I get caught up, but my store keeps having buy one, get ones on soup.
And the operative conversation there is they keep having.
Right.
They're going to keep having.
Yeah.
So while you put it on pause, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, their agenda is to sell you as many as they can, not to keep your pantry in order. Pat's comment has an interesting observation. It's kind of an illustration of the bigger buckets principle we talk about.
Yes.
When you organize it in a more complex way by variety and also expiration date, it's harder to maintain. You might lose sight of expiration dates in the attention to variety. And so Pat has very cleverly said, let's just make expiration date the organizing principle and use the old stuff first, whatever it is.
Exactly.
That makes a lot more sense.
It's easier, and it serves the dual purpose of getting rid of the stuff that's about to die, and brings it to your attention so that you'll use it. You can never forget that every store on the planet is always going to be trying to sell you more soup. They're not going to suddenly stop trying to sell you soup. And so you don't have to worry about this week's special not happening again. They will never go, okay, we're only going to do soup specials in, March of 2023, and then we're never doing them again. Like, that is not going to happen. So you don't have to worry about missing a special, because there'll be another one around the corner. And when you actually get low on soup, you can go and see, you can wait a little bit. If today isn't the soup special day, you can wait a couple of days and see when it is next week. It'll be okay. You will be able to find soup on special when you're ready to restock your pantry, is what I'm saying.
Susie said we have pumpkin pie filling and cranberry sauce that have best by use dates of 10 years ago.
Yeah. So
probably ready to be set free.
I think you should open it and see if it's edible. And I think you should figure out something to make with it right now. I think you should not worry about getting to Thanksgiving. I think you should have some Thanksgiving recipes today.
I think at 10 years ago, they might be ready to let go.
Will it be toxic?
Canned goods can last an awfully long time, but at 10 years, I would think there would be some degradation of the lining of the can by that point.
Right,
I don't know.
right.
But
well, and the truth is, it's $3 worth of food, right?
Right.
It's not like you're throwing up the steak that cost you $26 that you didn't cook. It's if you have to open it and throw it down the drain, you're throwing $3 away that you spent 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So it's probably not a big loss at this point. Think about it that way and clear out your pantry, man.
Dawn said, nowadays my preferred pantry products are often out of stock, so I tend to stock up when they are available. And supply chain issues have continued to plague us on and off. So right. I understand that. I think I would limit, I understand the impulse, and I would, for myself, I limit that to grape nuts. Grape nuts have been hard to get ever since the start of the pandemic. They come and go. Sometimes they'll have 6 boxes on the shelf, and then I'll go weeks seeing none. And so I tend to buy 2 because I don't have that much space. Tiny pantry.
And you don't, and you're not necessarily going to eat it that fast either. So you got to roll with it, right?
Yeah. I can adjust my grape nuts eating as necessary to make sure the supply stays fresh.
It's a breakfast cereal. Somebody said, what's a grape nut? It's a breakfast. Oh, yeah, it's a type of breakfast cereal.
It's which detractors refer to as gravel in cereal form. but fans of grape nuts can't live without it.
I used to eat grape nuts. I remember it was very crunchy.
Paul shared, went through my cookbooks a few years ago and only kept 4. Copied the few recipes I wanted to keep from other cookbooks and let the books go. It's been a real space saver.
Right? Because even if you have that book because there's one recipe in there that you love, then you can have a folder with miscellaneous recipes in it that came out of the books that you like. And so you can still have your one recipe, and that takes up a lot less space than the 27 books you got rid of. So totally worth taking the one-off recipes out of each book and sending those books on to the next cook that is going to cook more out of it. What causes the kitchen clutter to appear? The absolute truth about kitchen pantries is that they function like all closets in your house. We can't shop for more than will actually fit inside. We buy groceries with a complete disregard for the space that has to be stored in. It's important to shop for groceries with your space in mind. If you have a small pantry, overstocking food just makes a pantry mess that's harder to manage. Your stash needs to match your space, or you have to add capacity to store in the form of additional furniture or storage. Another kitchen clutter generator is buying in bulk, which seems like a great idea, but it really creates more problems than it solves most times. Bulk products aren't much cost savings if you're just bringing home a storage problem, or if you're just supersizing the amount of food you have to throw out for spoilage. So bulk buying only works if you're using the food that fast and you have a place to put it. If you have a bunch of adults in the house and everybody's eating and you go through food in a hurry, buying in bulk makes sense, and it isn't a storage problem for very long because the food gets eaten down quickly. And so the volume that you have to contain is going to shrink fast. But for the average person, 2-person household, that supersized discount warehouse version of your green beans, like going and buying a dozen green beans shrink wrapped together, is like, okay, I know we like green beans, but do we really like them that much? And we have to eat them that fast. And so it's not usually a great idea. And it always creates a storage problem. Most people don't have the kitchen space or the pantry space to absorb what comes home from a bulk buy shopping trip. There's just not enough cabinet space in the world to cover it all. So keep that in mind when you are standing in the Costco or the Sam's Club and going, but I really want to take home these 27 things that are all super huge and multiples of 20. The kitchen is also a way station on the way to elsewhere in the house. So it's that's part of why it ends up having a lot of clutter in it. We often come into the house via the garage, and it comes into the kitchen or near the kitchen from where we're coming out from outside of the house. So we stop in the kitchen with the mail and with the bags that we're carrying and everything, and it all kind of gets dropped in the kitchen. That's, of course, where the big counter space is, just waiting to receive what's in our hands. And the kitchen becomes the drop zone, which creates immediate clutter as soon as you walk in the house. So this is a problem. This is a consistent problem for everybody. When the counters get full, then you come into the kitchen and you start to drop it on the floor. So then it becomes the floor around the pantry, or the floor around the island, or the floor by the doorway on the way in from the garage that gets buried in stuff as, overflow comes off the island or the counters and goes out away from there. And based on your survey results, dirty dishes create clutter right away, because that's constant, but it's a constant but unfinished chore. And it's so gross to look at. I find a sink of dirty dishes really gross to look at, and I'm negatively motivated to clean the dishes by the gross factor of the dirty dishes sitting there. That haphazardly stacked pile is immediately cluttered looking, and it quickly fills up the space that's available in the sink and then near the sink, either from washing the dishes and putting them on a counter to dry, or lining the dishes up along the counter in the sink in anticipation of cleaning them. And so it doesn't take very many meals for there to be sort of a line of shrapnel down the side of your counter that is totally disastrous and gross and needs to be messed with. It just makes a big, ugly stack of clutter. And it's the one chore that everybody hates to do the most. And it's why dishwashers were invented. And it's why we, complain and stand at the sink washing dishes and mumbling under our breath because we hate it so much. But mastering that constant influx and outflow, what's coming in needs to wash, put away, that whole cycle is the biggest help you can give yourself. If you can figure out a system to do it, if you can figure out a way to motivate yourself to stay on top of it. At the very least, if you are the worst dishwasher ever, you hate loading the dishwasher and unloading it, you hate washing the dishes yourself by hand, then subtract dishes in the process. So use paper plates, and so you don't have to wash the plates. B, use all that plasticware that's been coming with all of your carry-out meals, so that could be thrown away. Look at cooking things that require less dishes. Don't make something that requires 27 dishes to make. Make meals that can all be cooked in one pot, so you only have one pot to clean. I mean, if you're that bad at it and you struggle that hard with it, modifying how you cook and serve will help you on the back end in terms of managing the dirty dish clutter. So how does the kitchen function once it's all cluttered up? Once all that clutter has been made, it does not function, actually. It renders your kitchen unusable. So if there's no counter space, then that means you have no work surface, and you have no ability to find things in the cabinets that are stuffed full. making a meal should be a really smooth operation, and junked up kitchen space makes it hard and no fun instead. Once the pantry's stuffed full and or it's inaccessible because you block the floor in front of the pantry or the floor inside the pantry, then you really have no idea what you have in there. And so you can't really plan to make use of anything that's available because you don't even know what's in there. You never have a complete picture of the useful ingredients on hand. So you never know whether you can make that recipe that you're craving or not, because you don't know if you actually have the things to make it with. And this is the one that makes me the most crazy. You buy new ingredients every time you want to make something because it's easier to buy new than digging through the pantry to find the ones you already have. And that to me is like going to the store and buying new underwear because you can't keep up with the laundry enough that you have clean underwear on a regular basis. If the solution to your problem is I'm making tacos tonight, and you go and buy new taco seasoning and new taco shells and new fill in the blank to make the tacos, then you're ignoring the ingredients you already have. And that to me is the real waste of your money, is buying it again and again and again when there's something already in there. And when the pantry's so junked or the refrigerator is so junky that you would rather go shopping than figure out what you have, that's a sure sign that it's time for a clean out. And what do you do? What do you get when you clear it out? You're going to save money because you don't buy as much, you don't double buy, you don't throw out as much, and you end up using what you have. You're definitely going to save time because you don't have to search for the ingredients. You don't have to clear off the counter in order to start cooking. What is the worst thing about going into the kitchen to cook is you have to stop and clear off the counter first before you can even get started. It's like you're doing half the work before you even begin. You're going to save time because it's easier to find the cookware that you want, and you know where your favorite slotted spoon is, and being able to get to the cooking utensils that you need and the cookware that you need quickly just saves you a bunch of time. Clearly, you're going to have fresher food because you're going to buy less food and more often. You're going to use it up because you can see that you have it. And that means you're using fresher food to cook. And that certainly makes everything taste better, right? And I want you to have this dream of your kitchen where you can find the right pan, you can see the ingredients you have, and you can work on a clear work surface with plenty of room to work. All of that adds up to a much more enjoyable cooking experience. In my mind anyway. Would you agree with that, Ed?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Sorry, lots of conversation in the chat about what to do if you don't have a pantry. M said, I don't have a pantry, but need one because I am sometimes isolated for months at a time. Need ideas for a pantry. And Marsh mentioned she bought some oak DVD racks, which are, DVD racks are only deep enough to store, one DVD. So they're not very deep,
very deep.
Good for canned goods, boxed products. Like if you're buying not cereal boxes, they'd be a little too big, but, cake mixes or bags of flour, most
mac and cheese.
Yeah, mac and cheese boxes. Yeah, there are a lot of items that would fit in that kind of a space. So that would make a decent pantry. We actually use a what I guess you'd call sort of like a Quaker cabinet. It's has a bottom level that has a drop down leaf that you can use as a prep area. And so we store some stuff behind there, and then smaller shelves across the top. If you use any kind of a narrow rack, make sure you take precautions to secure it really well to the wall, because it's going to make kind of, something tall and thin is going to be a little unstable for heavy products, heavy ingredients.
Lots of heavy stuff on it. And I would also say any kind of a bookshelf, a cabinet with doors, I'm thinking of an IKEA unit that has pull out containers.
Right.
people sometimes buy bookshelves and then try to put pantry on the bookshelves, but really that's just an open flat surface. And so it's super easy for something to get knocked off. Whatever you use as the parking space for your pantry goods, if it's something that you're creating, you're using open space, make sure you add containers so that the things can sit in a container and you can pull a container out and get what you want and put it back. So that when you go to grab a can in the back, or you go to grab that spice jar, you're not taking 15 things with you on the way out. Just having that little extra corralling of the container helps you not destroy the pantry when you pull things out of it. And if you're in that situation where you're manufacturing a pantry that doesn't exist, you are definitely bound by the rules of, you have a small pantry, therefore you cannot stack a huge amount of stuff. You can't store a huge backstock of food. You want to give yourself a functional set of food, and the variety happens in the rotation as you rebuy. Instead of keeping all the variety there 100% of the time, you buy this 25% this trip, and you use that up for a few weeks, and then you buy another 25% of different stuff and you use that for a few weeks. And so you rotate through the kinds of things that you like over time. So you're still getting the variety of food, you're just not stocking all of it at once. And I think that that's the better way to experience a variety of all of the things that you like, instead of trying to cram it all in a place that's just not designed to hold that much volume. You can't get all of the plethora of things available in the grocery store into your little makeshift pantry. And so you have to make a buying rotation plan that accommodates your need for variety and interest.
Yeah. Well, and Costco and other places like that, I guess Sam's, what else is like that? Anywhere that you go bulk food shopping, I think it's really important to go with a list of the things that you really use a lot of. Like when I go to Costco, there are only a handful of things that I really want to buy in bulk. And that's like canned black beans, which last forever. And we will eat canned black beans. We would eat canned black beans every day if it came down to that. And canned tomatoes last a really long time. So we have a very short list of bulk things. And then I think when you get into the fresh part of the store, they all have, they have fresh meat and fresh prepared foods and produce. It may look appealing and the prices are great, but I think you have to kind of have a shopping discipline that says, okay, but what am I going to do with that? Here's 3 pounds of frozen butternut squash cubes. Now, what am I going to cook with that? And if you don't have a plan, don't put it in your basket. Try and enforce that discipline on yourself. If you do have a plan, write on your shopping list. This is what I said I was going to do with this. Because of course, by the time you get home and unload and figure out where to put it all, your great idea has gone out the window.
Away.
Yeah. So use your shopping list to keep track of any meal plans that you're creating on the fly, so that you don't end up wasting the stuff that does come home with you.
Well, and I always find that I always want to buy more than I can actually eat fast enough.
Yeah.
The idea that I'm going to have 5 meals at home, dinners at home, that I'm going to prepare in a row, except I have this meeting out of the house this night and I have to be on Zoom this night. And there's always in a 7-day period, there's probably 4 nights or 3 nights that I can be home and cook. And the other 3 or 4 nights I have something else I have to do. And so the food that I need to have needs to be fast and furious. So I'm either taking out or I'm coming home and microwaving something that's already prepared. And so I have to buy with the idea that I can't cook for the whole week. I can only cook for a few days. And so buying 7 days worth of food that needs to be cooked just means I'm going to throw away fresh food. So you do have to shop for how you prepare as well.
Bella asks, what's the best way to combat the urge to buy because of inflation and global supply chain issues? I do understand that urge. I look at if going back to my grape nuts example, I see 6 of them on the shelf and I think, well, I would eventually eat 6, but I've sort of capped it in my mind as I don't ever want to have more than 2 unopened boxes of this because I just don't have that kind of room. Maybe part of what you can do is focus on, like, have a few reliable staples that you make sure you always have plenty of inventory. So in a pinch, if you can't get the more,
XYZ.
yeah, then you've
You always
got,
have ABC.
you have your backup. You have the thing that you always keep on hand. Because to try and keep on hand everything that you're ever interested in eating in reserve quantities is,
Well,
just,
it's like trying to build a grocery store in your house. You
yeah,
don't have the room for that, right?
yeah,
And I think you have to realize that while we're very accustomed to whatever we want is available whenever we want it. And because of the pandemic, that has shifted a little bit, and it's not 100% true, but it's not terrible either. Like, it isn't that we're going into stores that are empty. We go in the stores and they're full of stuff. There just may not be the
the
one thing
exact
that
stuff
you like,
we were
right?
looking
Like,
for.
you may be short one of your favorite products. And so just consider it that it's, while that product isn't there, there are a whole bunch of other products that you like. And so maybe you don't get to have that product right now, but you're not going to die if you have to eat something different. And it'll be available again. And in the meantime, the grocery store is plenty full of stuff that you can eat. And so no one is starving right now, in terms of no one is prevented from eating by the fact that the stores are empty. And so while our get what we want when we want it immediately training is being challenged, we can't 100% get what we want whenever we want it. There is still plenty of things for us to eat and do and buy. And so just reframe it a little bit in your head. Yes, your favorite thing is missing, but it's going to come back. And if it's not there right now, yeah, that's a little annoying, but you can try a different product. You can take that food off the rotation and eat something else right now, and it'll circle back around and you'll be okay.
I'm a super adventurous eater and I still fall into routines like anybody else and think, oh, well, I've got to have A, B, and C. I've always got to have these. And I have to remind myself, and actually Leela's response to Bella was a good one. She said, I'd say focus on living in and enjoying the moment and remember that life is imperfect. It will all work out fine in the end.
Mm-hmm.
You can open yourself up to serendipity and say, well, they're out of this, and I've always been a little curious about this other thing, so maybe it's time to try that.
Right. And the truth is, in the United States in particular, and because that's the market that I know, yes, our supplies are a little disrupted, but they're not massively disrupted, and there's plenty of food to be had. So I would do my best to not make your concern about supply chain disruptions bigger than the problem actually is, and to be flexible and willing to adapt. When something disappears for a little while, go try something else. Consider it a challenge to be entertained or adventurous and try something different. It may not be your favorite, but you may find accidentally a new favorite by trying something else, and your favorite thing will reappear someday. So don't worry, be happy. It'll all be fine, right?
Teresa asked, can we store canned goods in the garage? And I think that would be generally all right. If you have I'm thinking a Houston garage can get very
Really
hot, but most canned foods are prepared under heat anyway, so I think they could probably take it. I imagine that being subjected to higher than,
Heat and humidity.
well, the humidity is not going to have any effect on canned goods, but because the way the cans themselves are made these days, that you don't really get any corrosion for many years. You don't see
Okay.
corrosion of the steel, but they are lined with plastic that will eventually, there's like a plastic coating on the inside of most steel cans.
Right.
And
Which is going to break down in the
I
heat
would
over
think that
time.
the heat might have some effect on that. I think you could safely store canned goods in the garage if your turnaround on canned goods is pretty quick.
Right.
I wouldn't
That's what
keep
I
them in
would
there for
say.
years, but I think if you go through a lot of stuff quickly, that would be all right.
If you use it and you use it within a year of buying it, it's probably going to be just fine. I wouldn't go put things that annoy you and you don't use it very often and out there for 5 years or 10 years and then come and expect to get
Right.
it back out and use it.
Yeah. And Michelle warns, if you store your food in the garage, it might not get used.
Do
That would
that.
be another consideration. If you have to go buy it, if you park your car in the garage, so you have to walk past the food every day, that's probably okay, because you'll remember, oh yeah, I wanted to use this. But if it's easy to forget it in the garage, which is true for a lot of people, then maybe not a great option.
Well, and I would say that instead of putting the food out there, I would consider parking large kitchen appliances that you're not using very often out there. I mean, a pot that can get dusty in the garage is okay because it can come in and be cleaned. And if you need a pantry or a cabinet, I mean, if you need a shelf or a cabinet to function as a pantry and not as a storage for a big shrimp pot, then you can take those large pieces and put them out in the garage as a secondary storage for kitchen appliances.
For appliances, I would only do that if you can seal them up really tightly. I mean, in Houston,
Like things that have a plug, right? Yeah.
yeah, if it's electric, you want to make sure that you've
Box it.
excluded dust and humidity as well as possible, boxed, or even even a tightly sealing plastic bin or something.
Yeah. But those pots and pans that you use for a shrimp boil, or you use it at Thanksgiving and it's a huge tray or whatever, something that's large and infrequently used, that's a good thing to subtract because it uses up a bunch of kitchen space that would be that might be better used for something that you do more frequently. So
yeah, and glass or ceramic serving pieces would be perfectly fine in a garage too.
As long as it's up on a shelf somewhere so that you're not bumping it when you go by and it doesn't go flying, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how to improve your kitchen organization. And we'll say at the beginning that you have to start with a purge, because there's tons of stuff that you don't need there anymore. So going through and deciding what can be released is step one. One-use appliances that you only use every so often, they need to go into deep storage if you have the space. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Protect it and put it in the garage, put it in the back of the pantries or up high. And if you don't have the room for it, then out it goes. If it's a one-use appliance and you're not using it very often and you don't really have the space to store it, then that's one of the things that is more easily released than others. In the pantry, if you don't remember how long ago you bought it, you probably should throw it out. Canned goods can be donated. Check the expiration dates and watch your pantry clear out. Remove the I tried it and I didn't like it stuff. And the I thought I'd make that stuff. Those are all pantry supplies that are ripe for donation or throwing out. If that I thought I'd make that didn't actually come to pass. Go through your pots and pans and filter down to the ones that you routinely use and put those in all of the easy access spots. Put the low use items in the back of the cabinet or up high over your head, and then donate the rest. You don't need to park a million pots and pans if you're not using them very often. It's time to create your representative sample of things I use once in a blue moon and donate the volume out the door. Dishes are a good one to filter. How many serving pieces do you really need? And keep what you actually use don't keep what needs, don't keep it if you don't actually pull it out to use it very often. And, everybody has I use this at Christmas, I use this at Thanksgiving, but then you also have a million other serving pieces that you received as gifts, that you bought it on sale, you thought it looked cute, blah, blah, blah. And so all of those pieces, don't need to be in the kitchen. They can probably be stored in some kind of furniture in the dining room, or not in the kitchen elsewhere. And then depending on, serving pieces are for serving a collection of people at the table. So if you are not having lots of big gatherings where you need a bunch of decorative serving pieces to serve meals, then keeping a bunch of those against something that you don't really do very often is using up space that you don't have to. So find the ones that you really like. You have your favorite go-to ones, keep those, let the rest go if you can.
Let me interject. A couple of people have mentioned you do have to worry about canned goods rusting. And I suppose I hadn't seen this because I never did store cans in the garage in Houston. But Ellen from Western Michigan, who should know about such things, also mentions you have to be worried about canned goods freezing. If you if the cans freeze, they can be cans that freeze
and they get
or get very hot are more prone to losing integrity and rusting, bulging, or spoiling.
True that. That's probably true.
Now, freezing, your cans freezing in Houston is rarely a problem.
But it does happen. It has happened. We have had actual freezing weather. I'm sure Michigan has much longer and continuous bouts of freezing. And yes, that would be a weirdness, right? Did you have to worry about it? Didn't even think about it. Okay, so you have a million gadgets in the closet, in the kitchen. And so taking an honest look at what you actually use, what gadgets do you really like? And what are those favorite ones? And then the rest are just taking up extra space, right? It was a good idea. You thought you'd try it. Somebody bought it for you for fun. And, it's a gadget and it works, but you don't actually like to incorporate it into your food making process. So if you don't actually use it, if you don't think it's a good idea, if it's not one of your go-to gadgets, then it needs to be moved on to somebody else that thinks that they might play with it. Spices is a hard one. People always look at spice things and say, but there's still spice in there. Well, okay. If you take the lid off of the container and you don't really get much of an odor, or you get a really faint aroma coming out of it, I'm guessing it's not really going to impart much flavor, right? It's not going to add much to your food. So I think it's time to get rid of it. Regardless of the expiration dates, if it doesn't have much of a scent, then what is it really going to add to your recipe in terms of flavor? So aside from looking at expiration dates and deciding whether it's a spice that you would really like, check it to see if it really is going to have any efficacy, if it's going to really add flavor to your food. And if it isn't, because you've had it for 25 years or you inherited it from your mother and it seemed like a good idea, and the jar is 40 years old, you probably can let it go. And again, $3, $2, $5 worth of, 25-year-old spice going down the drain is not really a huge waste of your money at this point.
Okay, more on canned goods. Eclair says UNM Extension Office says that canned goods stored at temperatures over 100 degrees are harmful to canned goods. The risk of spoilage increases sharply at prolonged storage temperatures above 75 Fahrenheit. Nutrient loss increases. Check your county extension office for advice. So that does sort of rule out canned goods in the garage in Houston, because on a 96-degree day, your uninsulated, untemperature controlled garage could easily get into the 120s.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't, so maybe it's a temporary storage thing. Like maybe you can store 9 months out of the year in the garage, but you have to empty it in the summer. Right. It's a partial solution, not a 100% solution.
Right. That makes the, when we bring it home from Costco, it can live in the garage for a few weeks, but then we have to sort it into the pantry.
You have to eat it before June.
Yes, definitely eat it before June.
Okay, so
Really, once it's June, once it gets to the really hot part of the year in Houston, all you want to be doing is eating Mexican food with margaritas on patios and such,
exactly.
right?
Right. Nobody wants to turn on the oven in Houston in July, right? It's not worth it. That's so true.
Okay, let's see how far what do we have left to cover?
Two things. We got two things. One of them
Okay.
is plastic storage containers. That creates a lot of clutter, and it's something that's easily addressed. You need to pull out all the plastic storage containers you have, match the lids to the boxes, and get rid of anything that's unmatched, so that there's no point in using it as a storage container if you can't put a lid on it. Then you can't really store very much. And you probably have multiples of everything. You have duplicates and triplicates of all different kinds. So you have to ask yourself, how much food will you ever store at once? The worst scenario is probably Thanksgiving, where you have a million dishes and side dishes that all have to be put in the fridge. Half of them go into the fridge in the container they were cooked in anyway. And then you have a bunch of, so that in that moment, you're going to use a whole volume of containers, but maybe you got 10 leftovers running at any point in time during the year. So if you have a volume of containers that will address, I've got 10 leftovers to put in the fridge, then beyond that, the rest of the volume of containers is kind of useless and annoying. So concentrate on creating a working set that would cover your needs after you create a big meal and have leftovers. And once you have a working set that will basically handle everything, then let the volume be removed after that. And if you have glass containers with lids and you prefer that, then get rid of all the plastic. Save a little bit for giveaways if you're giving food away to people when you cook. Like me, my friends cook for me and then send me home with leftovers in plastic containers that I'm allowed to throw out. So that's something that you can consider. If I've sent leftovers away a lot, then maybe I want a little bit of plastic storage. If I use something besides plastic to store my stuff, then why am I keeping more than that? And you don't need 30 containers. No one's ever going to use 30 containers at once, unless you are catering. And then we have a whole nother discussion to have. So consider that you can shrink down that population to much less than you actually have. We like to have the variety, but you can get by with 10 or 15 things and be done 100% of the time. And then the last thing I'll say to improve the organization in the kitchen is you always have to find a better place for the mail to land. We all do that with the mail. We all need to think up a better system, because it's parking that, on the kitchen counter, on the island, on the desk in the kitchen. It comes in with our hands and the keys and the bag and the mail, and it all gets thrown on the counter. But it immediately and quickly builds up into an organizational disaster. So if you do nothing else to organize your kitchen, if you just create a better parking space for the mail, a place to move it so that you can sort it, and a habit or routine where you actually deal with the mail every day or every other day, throw all the pieces away, go put the mail that you're keeping where it needs to go, et cetera, et cetera. If you can just add that part into your kitchen organization, you will find that the counters are a lot less cluttered and they're a lot less annoying to look at. And they're certainly easier to use for food prep. So adding a habit of dealing with the mail and getting it open and having a place for it to land until you're ready to do that would be super helpful. Okay. So that's the end of my conversation today. And so, okay, so it's 1 o'clock. Let's get into a tittle. Let me do the tittle for today. Today's weekly tittle is entitled Eat It or Street It. This week's assignment is to free up space in your food storage areas by culling items that no longer meet the criteria to stay there. So you want to take a careful look through your pantry, your fridge, your freezer. Oh my gosh, your freezer, the spice rack, and any other food storage area you have in search of food items or ingredients that meet any of the following criteria. You bought the ingredient for a recipe that you've never made, so that one's probably something you need to let go of. You use the ingredient for a recipe, but you had some left over that you've never really used up. You tried a new ingredient or you prepared food, but you or your family didn't really like the result. So it was an experiment that failed, basically. You stored the item for so long that the expiration date has come and gone. So, or like I said earlier, you inherited that spice from your mother or your grandmother, and it probably needs to go at this point. There's some items that you received as a gift, but it's not really a food that you enjoy, that, you know, it's nicely packaged, but no one in the house is ever actually going to eat it. And so giving it up and letting it go, let it go out to the food pantry and let somebody eat it there. And maybe you don't even remember how the item ended up in your pantry. So if you find some things and you're like, where did this come from? I don't remember buying it. I don't know why it's here. That's another thing that's good for the pantry and for the food bank, right? You can let it go. Aim to pull out 5 items at least, or more if you can find them, that satisfy any of the criteria listed above, and take the appropriate action. If something you've found still seems appealing, then maybe you can plan a meal that will use the ingredient in the coming weeks. For unwanted items that are still in good condition, donate them to a food pantry or a shelter. For unwanted items that are still usable but got opened already, so they can't go to a food pantry, then look for a family member or a friend who might like to use the remainder. Maybe one of your neighbors would use it. For unwanted items that are past their expiration date or they're of dubious quality, then throw them away and empty and rinse and recycle the containers. So our goal is not, the Tittle is not for a complete pantry clear out. We just want you to look through the contents and see if you can pull out at least 5 things that satisfy those criteria, and go through the process of taking it to the food bank, giving it to your friend, recycling, throwing it out and recycling the container, whatever works for you based on what it is. Okay.
All
Good
right.
luck with it. We'll wait to hear from you how it goes.
We're about out of time. I want to remind everyone that we'll be back for our next live webcast on Tuesday, February 14th at noon US Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. We're going to do an Ask Us Anything show with 3 smaller topics. First one, you've made up your mind to get rid of something, but your heart hasn't caught up with your head. We're going to call that segment Breaking Up is Hard to Do. We're going to explain how to apply Clutter Fairy principles to planning the contents of a room on the smallest possible scale in Organize Your Tiny Bathroom. And you're not lazy and you don't lack self-control, but why do you procrastinate? We're going to explore the causes of procrastination and what you can do about those behaviors. Join us February 14th for Ask Us Anything, Breaking Up is Hard, Tiny Bathrooms, and Why We Procrastinate.
One of each of your favorite things to talk about, I'm sure.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. Leela says, just keep the cats out of the bathroom, whatever you do.
No kidding. Very sage advice, Leela. Thank you.
We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on Facebook, YouTube, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I'm going to add up one more sign, Ed, and say, if you don't realize it, all of these get recorded and posted on YouTube. So if you want to see any of our backlog of gazillion other times we've had these conversations, please go to cfhou.com/YouTube and check us out. And we got a lot of videos out there. I'm just saying.
Yes, we do.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.